we are now changing our role from this policing of the world, stretching our forces and commitments all over the world, and concentrating ourselves where it matters, where the threat really lies.
Your job, and you were short of pay for 9 weeks.
You're only ordinary working class guy, the same as the rest.
Any comment you make? I showed you, that's what we're doing, but we're doing what we're told. We're breaking no law either. We're asking you to cooperate with the working class movement. You're a worker, same as we are.
I signed on at 16 for 12 years. I had a chance to get out after 3 months and 6 months, and I believe had a chance to get out when I was 18. When I finished training in the Marines, I still believed that I could get out when I was 18. And I later found out, in fact, that when it was coming up to my 18th birthday and I was about to sort of exercise this option, I found out that I'd been misled, and so did a lot of other friends who I'd been in with. And I couldn't get out when I was 18, and that the only thing I could do was to reduce my, or to change my contract so that I could get out 3 years from the age of 18. In other words, I could get out when I was 21. Well, that was a bit of a shock to me, and to a lot of other friends as well. It was bloody miserable, because at that time, coming up to my 18th birthday, I'd been in nearly 2 years, and I was very, very disillusioned by then. My experience of officers was that they were very, very anti-union, and they've got a very, their attitude is that, you know, all industrial conflict and all, basically all anti-establishment activity is controlled by the Kremlin.
This kind of terrorism is extremely difficult to deal with. How do you deal with the situation?
The obvious thing to do, though, is to stamp out this sort of uprising straight away. You've got to show yourself to be capable of maintaining law and order, despite what physical measures they're going to use against you, while also politically mature enough to let them carry on with their rantings and ravings in Parliament.
Firstly, the Independence Revolutionary Association, and they are based mainly over in this area of the town. They are mainly a left-wing organisation who draw their support from the unemployed and the lower classes.
At our school that I'm at now, we had this kind of careers interview, preparing us for the one in 5th year, and you just walked in, most kids just walked in, he asks you what do you want to do, says I don't know, and he just gives you leaflets on the Army, Air Force and all like that, you know, and that is basically the only careers advice we got.
Just to get the people who are straight from school and that all already gone through school system to accept a harder kind of thing, just to accept their situations and to obey orders, not to think, and just to do as the people in charge see fit. If anybody fought for himself, they wouldn't go around blowing other people's heads off, would they? I mean, and that is what the army does. It turns ordinary human beings into flipping murderers. And they can't do that by saying, think for yourself. They just do it by using discipline and that to stop you from thinking, to turn you into a moron, just accept what they say.
Last year, we had this caravan come round with these blokes in, and they had a couple of grenades, and they just was signing up kids who wanted to join the army and that. But, you know, most kids, the only reason they would join the army is because they've got no alternative at the moment. You know, you don't see any way out. It's just an escape from the dole and the situation as it is.
Reckon you could keep your head in a crisis? Reckon you got the strength to handle the aggro? Reckon you could keep going when you're just fit to drop? Reckon you could do all this and more if you're 17 or over? we'd like to meet you.
Kids have an idea that some people think, well, I'll learn a trade. You know, the army's a good thing for a trade because in civilian life I'm not going to be able to learn much of a trade with the wages being what they are and the job opportunities being what they are. So a lot of people join the army, think, I'll learn the trade and get out after that. But the thing about learning a trade in the army is if they teach you a trade, then your terms of contract alter. So in fact, it's much harder to get out of the army. If you sign a contract that gives you the right to discharge by purchase, and most contracts have this, which means that you can buy yourself out, and you learn a trade, then when you learn your trade and you apply to be discharged by purchase, to buy yourself out, you'll find that this so-called right is not a right, in fact, and it's purely at the discretion of the CO. In other words, you can apply for your discharge by purchase, but you'll very likely find that the CO and his various administrative staff, the first thing they look at is whether a person's got a trade or not. And if he's got a trade, they say, well, you know, we spent a lot of money on him, you know, and plus the fact that we need these tradesmen. We've got a tour coming up in Northern Ireland, so we're going to need our signallers, our drivers and our mechanics and so on. And we can't afford to let him go. And so they turn down your application. And you can only apply twice a year, at least in the Marines that was the case. So that meant that if you, I mean, I knew one person who had applied no less than 5 times, and it took him 2.5 years to actually get his discharge, and he was just a signaller.
I'm lying in bed, I'm in room 26, and I'm thinking of things that I've done, like drinking with squaddies and bulling my boots and counting the medals I've won. These hospital wards are all drab-looking joints, but the ceiling's as much as I see. I could do with a wee touch of paper or paint, but then again, maybe that's me. Oh, Sergeant, is this the adventure you meant when I put my name down on the line? Oh, you talk of computers and sunshine and skis, oh my. I've a brother in Partick with long curly hair. When I joined up, he said I was daft. He said shooting strangers just wasn't his game. That brother of mine isn't soft. But I can put up with most things I've done in my time. I can even put up with a pain. But what do you do with a gun in your hand when you're facing 100-odd wains? Oh, Sergeant, is this the adventure you meant when I put my name down on the line? Oh, you talk of computers and sunshine and skis. Oh, I'm asking you, Sergeant, where's mine? I'm asking you, Sergeant, where's mine? I am asking you, Sergeant, where's mine?
The other thing is that travel in the army, well, you know, it's true that you do get around. So, I mean, I travelled to America and I travelled to the West Indies and so on. There are places other than Northern Ireland that you can go to. But travelling with the army is nothing like you see on the posters, and it's nothing like a sort of Pontin's holiday tour or something like that. It's when you travel with the army, you generally find that you have very little leave in these places. The restrictions on the hours you can spend away from your ship or your barracks, whatever it is, when you're abroad, are much tighter than they are in Britain. You've got to be in at things like 12 o'clock. You get the feeling that you're not in fact in a foreign country at all, that you're just basically in the garrison town, and most garrison towns throughout the world are just the same.
They reached their objective, a successful exercise, and the reserve force will be back in England within a week.
There's nothing worse, I can't think of, nothing worse than, say, after, having been out for hours on some stupid sort of, foot patrol or something like that, then having to, say, come back and, sort of snatch a couple of hours sleep and perhaps get up and sort of, polish your boots or sort of iron your uniform. When I first joined up in '68, there were very few blacks in the army on a whole, out of a company of some 300 or so. I think there was about 6 or 7 blacks. Now, after I joined the battalion and about my time of leaving, there were, in some companies, where anything up to a third of the companies were made up of blacks. A lot of black kids are more or less being railroaded into the army because blacks always are at the sort of, top of the unemployment heap, like. So in a period like we're now in, means that, they're even much more of a, army fodder.
Now if you want to find the colonel, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the colonel, I know where he is. He's pinning another medal on his chest, big chest. I saw him, pinning another medal on his chest. I saw him, pinning another medal on his chest. And if you want to find the captain, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the captain, I know where he is. He's in Paris on 7 days' leave. I saw him in Paris on 7 days' leave. I saw him in Paris on 7 days' leave. And if you want to find the sergeant, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the sergeant, I know where he is. He's drunk upon the dugout floor. I saw him, drunk upon the dugout floor. I saw him, drunk upon the dugout floor. And if you want to find the private, I know where he is. I know where he is. I know where he is. If you want to find the private, I know where he is. He's hanging on the old barbed wire. I saw him, hanging on the old barbed wire. I saw him, hanging on the old barbed wire.
Who? I mean, he was there now, installed. And it was very agreeable indeed. We had enormous fun together.
It was very easy for the politicians to use a military force, those who are in uniform, to perform a task such as the army was doing inside Aden, and that was to crush any political opposition. Because the people who are performing that task, who themselves are being killed and being injured, don't ever question why they're doing it. I know that when I was in Aden, we never talked about the political situation there. Our level of consciousness, or our level of conversation about talking about Adenese were, oh, these fucking wogs, etc., which was essentially, I think, to be expected of any army or any military personnel under active service. We were conditioned to think in terms of that is the enemy, this is who we're fighting, and never question it. you've got to understand that the army is representative of a ruling class. It is representative of that. It is created by that ruling class. And that the people who are supporting this ruling class are coming from the oppressed class, from the working classes. Here I was joining an organization to support a minority ruling class, minority ruling interests. They want to maintain their power, they want to maintain their capital, they want to expand their capital, and they must have the tools in their hand to maintain just a power situation. But I would doubt if there are many people who have went into an armed service and who have thought very clearly about that. What they normally find, that they think that the army is defending the country. It is there to defend, in defense of an outside external enemy, which is a threat to the security of the country which they were brought up on. And this is a very great sacrifice they are making, that they want to defend against this external threat, and that they are proud to go into uniform and salute to the upper class.
Did British troops ever go any place to maintain peace? Did they go to Malaysia to maintain peace? Did they go to Kenya? Did they go to Borneo? And did they go to Aden with Mad Mitch with them? They've gone to oppress popular movements of the people. We should do it on the basis of proletarian solidarity. Any defeat that British imperialism experiences in Ireland is a victory not only for the Irish working class, but for the English working class as well.
A lot of people who are in there, people who had been forced to join the army under the threat of a magistrate coming heavily down on them, perhaps for some juvenile offence. You know, the sort of people who a probation officer or someone had said, look, say you're joining the army and perhaps the magistrate will go light on you. I spent 4 months in Colchester Prison, or rather, sorry, about 3.5 months in Colchester Prison, and it was an interesting experience looking back on it. The type of people who I met in Colchester were, much to my surprise, mostly people who were not in fact criminals in and the reasons why they were in Colchester for things like, in civilian terms, were not criminal offences: absences, desertions, and refusing to obey certain orders and various things like that. And one of the surprising things was the amount of people who actually were in Colchester for desertions and absences, and the way that the prison population had increased over the period that the British Army had been in Northern Ireland.
So that life can go on in these areas, and ordinary men and women can feel that they can move about without fear.
It's more like Hitler's Gestapo.
Oh, I read it. She was telling me that when she was shot, you see, she was shot through the back, and I went right through her stomach out the front, and she was shot at the bullet actually entered her head, just behind her ear. And she said to me, picture, you know, she had beautiful long red hair, and she got a crop really close into her head. And she said, me feel that. And there's actually a dent that you can put your finger in, the bullet, you know, the hole that the bullet has left. And she has a permanent limp that she'll be left with for the rest of her life. But she was telling me that when they left her, when they got her, after she'd been shot, she was lying there. They were chasing her and she jumped over a wall to get away from them, and they shot her in the back. And they dragged her over to where the Saracen was, and they left her lying there for about 15 minutes before they put her in the Saracen. Then they lifted her and threw her in. And she says she was conscious the whole time all this was going on. And when they got her in the Saracen, one of them, she was still breathing pretty heavy, and one of the British soldiers said, oh, he's not dead yet. And an officer says, shoot him now. And the soldier kicked Rita's face around, and he realised it wasn't a he, that it was a girl. And he said, that's not a fella, it's a young girl. And they dragged her up, you know, further into the Saracen. And Rita said at this time the blood was pouring out of her because she could feel, you know, the heat, the wetness of the blood. And she had a short coat on, and it had been buttoned. It was buttoned, you see, at this time it was buttoned. And she said they just ripped it open. And she said, I was lying there on my back, and as soon as they ripped it open, the blood just went up into the air like a fountain. She said, and I knew this was going on. I had my eyes open. And she told me that she looked up and she saw this blood just spurting up like a fountain. And she said, is that me? Is that my blood? And, you know, she actually couldn't believe that it was her blood she was watching actually flowing out of her. And she said that they kicked her on the side of the head and the face, and they hit her with the butts, you know, of their rifles. When she went into the hospital, the surgeon there, you know, he had a report. Was given evidence at her trial, and he said that the evidence alone that she was in such a bad condition, not from bullet wounds, but from the kicking that she'd got while she was in the Saracens. And at this time she was lying really badly wounded, so she was. She had to have an operation on her head. She also had to have a bowel operation. And it has left her with a permanent limp, a limp she'll have all, you know, her life. One of her legs is shorter than the other now. But she went through an awful bad time of it. And she's still as militant as ever, you know.
Well, as far as I see it, the Army in Northern Ireland is only there for one reason, and, you know, that is to protect the British interests in Northern Ireland. And that's all they do. And the only way they can do that is to, you know, suppress any kind of Republican movement or national movement.
Before going on patrol, you'll be given a briefing and a list of photographs and names and addresses of people to look out for and people to arrest and bring in for questioning and so on. But you'd also, because you were based in an area, you'd also have a certain knowledge of that area, and you'd know sort of, for instance, which people are actually what you would term Republicans, and you would then deliberately stop and harass them. You know, sort of the classic is that the classic system that's used is you stop somebody, you do a question them, find out where they're going, get onto the radio, find out whether the base has got anything on them. If they don't want this person in for questioning, you let them go, but you then radio your mate up the road to stop them, and you keep that going on. For instance, in Strabane, you could get stopped a person could get stopped 5 or 6 times in, say, half an hour. Actually just delayed from doing whatever they're going to do. Because you know, it's just a form of harassment.
Ah, well, the soldier